Okay, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. So happy. We're here with Bridget Cash. I always say her name incorrectly.
It's Koetsch.
But she is, exactly. I knew it. I knew I was going to say it wrong.
It's okay. It's my husband's name.
I say it. Okay. Koetsch. Okay, so Bridget has a bachelor's in education and special education. She's taught for over 22 years in public schools. She went to establish Children's First. It's an educational coaching which provides tutoring, advocacy, consultant, and professional development throughout Massachusetts. Bridget served as an SESP and also presented RTSC's February's webinar on understanding reading disabilities and assessment. She's currently a training, support, and recruitment specialist with our TSC's program for children with special worker. Right now, she's going to do like a walkthrough of the IEP form and notices to be on the lookout for and where to include information. So when you guys know, this format is in our workshop, is like a workshop format. So there'll be like questions and answers. We're going to hold all questions till the end. So if
we're actually not,
they'll be in the question box or in the chat.
I have different stop spots for questions. Yeah. I like to shake things up.
Well, there you go. So thank you so much for presenting, Bridget. You're amazing. So I'm going to go now and let you do what you do. All right.
Alrighty. Thank you, Polly. Okay, I'm going to share my screen, see if we can get some success at this. And my presentation. Excellent. So we're going to navigate the IEP for SESPs and anyone else who happens to be here. I'm going to go through my technical difficulties here. So at the end of this, you'll better understand forms and notices used by DESE as they relate to eligibility, IEP development, and placement. I created this presentation using these three publications that are on DESE's website. You may or may not have gotten my push out notice to print out some of the documents that we're going to be going through. This is recorded, so you can always come back and rewatch it. But throughout this presentation that you'll have a copy of, it's kind of a live document. So you'll be able to click on these live links, and we'll do that throughout. Teams must do the right thing, and this is right from DESE. They say all of these things are not just the law, they are the right thing to do for our students. So laws and regulations tightly control the IEP process. Mass IEP was developed to ensure that teams are in compliance with the myriad rules and regulations related to the IEP. However, the best reason to carefully follow the process and its key elements are listed below to ensure positive student-centered results. Key elements: assessing in all areas related to the suspected disabilities, considering access to the general curriculum, considering how the disability affects the student's learning, developing goals and objectives that make the biggest difference for our students, and ultimately choosing a placement in the least restrictive environment. So as we go through, I'm going to sort of make this presentation as in three sections. We'll talk about eligibility, and then I can take questions on eligibility forms, IEP development, and I'll take questions on the IEP development. This presentation is to sort of give us an overview of the documents. We're planning on going deeper in webinars in the future on each component, but this really is kind of just a navigation tool. IDEA. Purpose of IDEA is to ensure that all children with disabilities have available to them free and appropriate public education that emphasizes special education and related services designed to meet their unique needs. And this is the one that we underlined: prepare them for further education, employment, and independent living. It's not just about in the school building. It is the independent living that we want to keep in mind as well. So to jump into IEP notices, the first IEP notice is the N1. And I'm going to walk us through it and then come back to this page. So the N1 is very important when requests are denied. It is the notice of proposed school district action. It is what gets called that prior written notice. In Massachusetts, we call it the proposed school district action. It's two-page multi-purpose form. Notice is designed to be used anytime a school district proposes one or more of the following actions. after an initial evaluation, after reevaluation, after emergency eval, extended eval, IEP and IEP amendment, placement, service, termination for a student previously eligible for special ed, and graduation. Any other proposal to initiate or change the identification, evaluation, educational placement, or the provision of special education services. What I find most important about this document is this second page. These are really the meeting notes. So here in the narrative description, these are the 6 questions that have to be addressed. Number 1 is, what action is the school district proposing to take? Why is the school district proposing to take it? Number 3 is the key. What rejected options were considered and why was each option rejected? This becomes important when you've requested a different placement, you've requested social skills group and the school says they don't provide that. Whenever you've requested something that gets denied, in that IEP meeting as SESPs, I want you to be comfortable saying, could you make sure that's on the N1 that we've made a request and it has been denied? It's important information for you to have documentation of why the denial was made. Evaluation consent form. DESE has revised this to include a checkbox for parents to indicate their request for evaluation summaries. Regulation states that schools do not have to provide you with assessment reports until 48 hours before the meeting. This was something you had to request in writing, although it was not written anywhere that you had to request that in writing. So what they've done is, to this form, is right down here, you check it. I request access to all summaries of assessment reports at least 2 days in advance of the team discussion. So just making sure you check that will help greatly. Also, what's important on here is the parent response. I accept the proposed evaluation in full. I reject the proposed evaluation in full. I accept the proposed evaluation in part and request that only the listed assessments be completed. And this one, I additionally request the following assessments, and you can list those assessments that you're requesting. This becomes important if you see that up here, maybe they didn't do a behavior rating scale, or you wanted the CTOP if there was a reading concern, and there were specific assessments that you wanted to make sure speech and language did. It's designed to accompany the N1 when evaluation is proposed and should be attached to the N1 and should never be used independently of the N1. So you shouldn't just get that form, you should get it with the reasons why assessments are being requested, either your request or the school's request. Notice of school district refusal to act. So this one is worded harshly. It's used mostly when your student has been evaluated and no finding of special need has occurred. It's designed to be used whenever a school district does not intend to act on a request to initiate or change the identification, evaluation, educational placement, or provision of special ed services. So some of these just come as part of your IEP packet and they're easy to sort of ignore or to breeze through. But they are important because they also have these components. What is harsh is the school district has recently discussed this student with you. We now write to tell you of our intention not to act on a request. We have described our reasons for refusing on page 2 of this memo. So it does sound harsh. School districts are not allowed to amend these and change the wording of them. And so it kind of is what it is in that regard. Meeting invitation. Oh, this is very important. It should be used each time the school district plans to hold a meeting. It's not considered complete unless the next sheet, the attendance sheet, is attached. Right now, we may see these in emails, but this information still needs to have the meeting purpose, the meeting date, time, location, the contact person, and contact information. The next form, if the suggested meeting time is inconvenient, this is still on the meeting invitation form, we will set a more convenient time. That is important. A lot of times schools will just tell you when the meeting is, because they have a lot of people to organize. But it is always your prerogative to say, that is not a convenient time for me. I'll need to reschedule. You may invite other individuals to attend who have knowledge or special expertise regarding this student. That is true for parents and guardians. That is not true for SESPs, as only members of the student's team is allowed to participate. So you wouldn't necessarily have the same availability of that. The attendance sheet. So the names of the team members and what their roles are. And this usually when we're in live, you'll go around and initial this. And again, it has the purpose of the meeting, the date of the meeting, all your students' identifiable marks. This form is important because I like to ask at the start of the meeting for the attendance form to be sent to me as an advocate and as a mom. Because a lot of times there's a lot of people in your meetings that you may not remember who they are or what their role was. And having that document can let you figure out, if you're in a Zoom, you could say, well, the woman to the top left said this. Now you can kind of put a name to a face. And request this form be shared with you at the start of the meeting. Usually I'll say, could I have meeting notes and the attendance sheet at the end of the meeting? Go here. All right, so I kind of went through that fast. Are there any questions? Pauline? Let me see. Let me access that. Hi, Pauline.
Nothing so far. Just hi, can you hear me?
I can.
Oh.
All right. So if no questions,
delayed. No. Yep.
I will continue
Move
on. All righty. Our next section is eligibility determination. So this form is the flow chart when you're deciding on eligibility at an initial and at all 3-year re-eval determinations. This is one that is part of the student's record, but is not sent home. I think you can request it, but it's not part of the initial packet. On this document, it becomes part of the student record, but does not need to be sent home to parents. It states the disability or disabilities. An important component of that is, I have so many things open, I don't know what to do. Okay, here we are. So proceed with the flow chart until an eligibility determination is reached. You may never see this in the meeting, but usually the team leader will have it. And they'll say, does the student have one or more of the following types of disabilities? And these are the only options that we have to use. Autism, developmental delay. Developmental delay can be used until a student is 9, but be cautious of just relying on that one. An intellectual disability, sensory, hearing, vision, deaf, blind, neurological, emotional, communication, physical, specific learning, and health. If no, student is not eligible and this process ends. If yes, then you state the disability. Is the student making effective progress in school? If yes, then no eligibility. If no, we continue down. Is the lack of progress a result of the student's disability? If yes, continue down. Does the student require specially designed instruction? If yes, student is eligible for special ed services. This next part, B, answer this question for all students. Is the parent satisfied with school evaluation? So if there's an area that you just didn't think you had enough information to go on, this is the area that you could say, you know, I think we need a CTOP, which is usually the one I ask for. I think we need more information to find this out. And then discuss an extended eval if needed. If you need more information before even developing the IEP, or if you need more information while a partial IEP is developed. So this is an important part. When they say, are you satisfied with school evaluation? You can say, well, the ones that were done, but I feel like maybe we need, you know, others to address different needs. Key evaluation findings and or next steps. And that's where this gets written in. Directions for mass IEP forms. So this, although I'm giving you a breakdown of the documents in the publications that are on DESE's website, I also want to give you the links to those. So that is the Ed1 or the flowchart. The administrative data sheet is the cover sheet to the IEP. And this has your students' information, your information. This part right here, the meeting information, is the part I ask all SESPs and all parents to really double check. It says when your meeting occurred, what type of meeting. You want to make sure that's consistent with what the type of meeting was. When the next annual review meeting is, because you could have a meeting here in November, but the IEP review meeting might be in March. So just make sure, because if the type of meeting was to discuss placement, or the type of meeting was to discuss a different finding of a different special ed need, this meeting won't always be matching the annual review. The next scheduled 3-year re-eval meeting, it's important to check here. It's also important as SESPs with our students who are who move around a lot, to make sure that this 3-year is true, and that you look at their last 3-year date and look at the assessments and see if it matches up within that 3-year time span. This part, the assigned school information, is not always accurate in the documents you may get right away. And so double check that and make sure that there's an administrative data sheet that does state where the student is currently. See, and this is my double check meeting information. Extended evals. Extended eval form should be used to record the need for additional assessments if a student was found eligible for special ed, and if the required evaluation data was inconclusive, or to obtain answers to other evaluation questions that may occur after the student is found eligible. Let me go to these documents. What I will say that is good about these documents is DESE includes these important details in the regulations, so that you know what is supposed to be in these forms and why, and for how long, and what those regulations are. So if you're requesting an extended eval, these are the questions that need to be addressed. And when this comes home to you for your approval, making sure that what was stated is what is written. And sometimes it can just be human error, and sometimes that may not be the case. I like that they include the state regulations on the forms. Any additional information needed to clarify the details of the extended eval will be recorded on that EE2 in the additional information section. Eligibility form questions. Do we have any?
Nothing.
Nothing. Am I?
No, everyone's like quiet.
I know.
They're just so engaged.
Right. So I do see a comment. It would be better for all of us if they just had us check a box for if we do not want the report in advance. So true. What I'll say about that report in advance is, if you don't get it within the 48 hours, it is your prerogative to ask for the meeting date to be changed in the meeting time. I particularly, want to stress to use that if it's a 3-year re-eval and you're getting all of these. You could be getting an OT eval, a PT eval, speech and language, BCBA, cognitive, educational. That's a lot of information to look at just 24 hours before the meeting. It's a lot of information to look at just 48 hours before the meeting, but 48 hours right now is the regulation until we can change that. So that's where making sure you have those documents. And if you don't, you can just call and say, I did not get these documents, and I would like to extend the time for this meeting. I hope that addresses things. All right, we're moving on, if I can, to the IEP. So most of us have seen IEPs, hopefully all of us that are SESPs. So I'm going to walk through just to kind of address what you can find on these forms. Like I said, we're hoping at RTSC to have guest webinar presenters to go through these with more specific detail, but I did just want to give you kind of an overview. I think these are documents that we look at all the time. And as someone who's a special ed teacher, I have looked at these for 23 years. Creating this presentation though, just gave me a different view. And I thought, man, I think we should just revisit every once in a while. You know, writings on these pages become white noise when really those regulations are in place and sometimes written on these. So I just want to make sure. Let's see, IEP 1, what concerns does the parent have? So I am going to, all right. So again, student's name, IEP dates from when to when. This is a great one to check, making sure that you're looking at the current IEP. A lot of times our packets come in and we get all sorts of IEPs and drafts, and double checking that you have the most current one that you're going off of. Also checking grade level. Here's what concerns does the parent and or students want to see addressed in this IEP to enhance students' education. This is a good one to have in written form and email the school prior to your meeting and say, these are the concerns I really want to address at this meeting. Should it be reading, math, social, access to dances at the school, after school activities, you know, any concerns that you have during the life of the school and life of your child. This is where you would put those in. I like to use bullet points so that they don't get sort of lost in anecdotal conversation in your emails and in your documents. So that would be my point. When a student turns 14, they become a more active participant, and we begin to ask them, what are your concerns? You know, and this also is a time to, you know, to reach out to your appointee and say, so we have that IEP meeting. What do you have concerns? What do you want to be better at? And sometimes what we hear is, I want someone to sit with me at lunch. That's a valid concern, and that should be put in here. So not always just thinking about the academic component, but the whole life of the child. When we look at student strengths and key evaluations, again, these are the questions that need to be answered here. Having all of the assessments for, I've seen IEPs that this section is 3 or 4 pages long. You want the most updated information in this section. What are your students' strengths, interest areas, significant personal attributes, and personal accomplishments? That should be that beginning part. What is your student really good at? What do they like to do? What are their hopes? And this is what are the types of disabilities, general ed performance, including MCAS, district test results, achievement towards goals, and lack of expected progress, if any. So this section is where the team sort of comes together and everyone kind of presents their findings. The vision statement, just like you did up here where you came to the meeting prepared, come to the meeting a little prepared for this section. At 14, the statement should be based solely on the student's preference and interest, and should include desired outcomes in adult living, post-secondary, and working environments. So again, not just in the building. But this part is good to have sort of a heads up before you kind of dive in. Let me see if I addressed everything on there. Students' concerns, vision statement, 1 to 5 year period. And part of the vision statement could be that social emotional component as well as academic. So that was IEP page 1. Let me check to see if there's any chats. Okay, IEP page 2, present level of education performance, A, general curriculum. And this is the one we shorthand and call the PLEP A. And let's take a walk there. So the PLEP A is about the curriculum. If your student has a disability in reading, all of these would be checked because reading is a component of all of these curricular areas. If math is a concern, then math would be. If it's behavioral and not linked to academic, sometimes the PLEP A is not completed. So I just sort of wanted to state that. But in this area, how does the disability affect progress in the curriculum? And it would be student would have difficulty accessing the curriculum and making progress due to a reading disability. And this is where you would have sort of, you can have your test scores in here. This is what types of accommodations, if any, is necessary for the student to make effective progress. And list with the team what ones would be help your student access the curriculum. So here might be noise canceling headphones, wiggle seats, access to grade level material through audio. And that would be all of the grade level material through audio. Access to, I'm trying to think of other accommodations that could be on here, where they sit, seated at the front of the room, seated at the part of the room with the least amount of noise or visual disruption. So this is where those accommodations are. This one also becomes important right now for remote learning, because if these are the accommodations that make it necessary for your student to have access to the curriculum and make progress, then whether they're in the building or in your kitchen, they still may need these. It's not really a shopping list, because not everything that would work in a school will work at home, but noise canceling headphones, if that's something they need to access the curriculum, and now they're accessing the curriculum at home, then I think it would benefit from an email to the district and say, geez, when can I come and pick up these noise canceling headphones? I see that, you know, I definitely need them at home, and I see it's an accommodation on the plan. So just making sure that these are effective accommodations. And then down here we have content, methodology, delivery of instruction, and performance criteria. Let me see what I have written over here. Nothing. So for content, it could be follows the mass curriculum frameworks. It could be in this area for methodology and delivery of instruction. It could be you cannot list a specific reading program. So you could not list Orton Gillingham or Wilson or any other program, but you can list the style. It needs to be a systematic, phonics-based or phonemic awareness, or whatever type of program it needs. It needs to be multisensory with manipulatives for a math program. It needs to be delivery of instruction, small group. And what is small group? Is small group less than 20? Is small group 2 to 4? Is small group 6 to 8 kids? So you can delineate that in this section. And then performance criteria would be progress reports, informal assessments, and progress monitoring. And then we'll go to the PLEP B. Let me see if there's anything. PLEP B, present level of education performance, is other educational needs. So other educational needs would be, I guess I could just keep one document open. All of these that apply, and this could be where the social emotional needs piece, this is where a lot of our kids, this is kind of the bulk of our concerns, or at least we know that they'll most likely have these concerns. Behavior, communication, non-academic activities, that's after school programs, that's if your student is in transition age, 14, 15, 16, you know, getting ready to get out of high school. The non-academic activities could be travel training, you know, using mass transit. This is where all of sort of those components go in. They're age specific. Ages 3 to 5 participate in appropriate activities. For children ages up to 14, students' course of study. For ages 16 to 18, transition to post-school activities, including community experiences, employment objectives, other post-school adult living, and if appropriate, daily living skills. That's where these pieces come in. Again, same questions. How does this disability affect progress in the indicated areas? What types of accommodations, if any? And this would be the content, methodology, and performance criteria. Some of this might be as far as transportation or travel training. These pieces can be in here. What usually happens is for most of our kids, OT, PT, guidance, they would put in accommodations here. This would be in one of the sessions that we talked about this morning, is where we would say behaviors. If the student's lack of skill inhibits them from being able to follow school regulation. And so to make it a not zero tolerance, you know, and you can word it better than I just did, in here, in as far as behavior and how it matches to the school's handbook. And again, we're going to have someone discuss this in a webinar soon. IEP 4, current level, performance level. So this is the goal page. And here we have, go down. And they make this so that you can put 2 goals on each page, although rarely have I seen that able to be done. So your goal number, what the focus of the goal is. For instance, for reading could have a couple of different components. It could be reading decoding, and then you could have another goal for reading comprehension, reading fluency would probably go with decoding, but there are different aspects. So current level, what can the student currently do? What I would say to this, and what I see particularly for reading, is I see is reading a level N, or is reading a level P, and it has is tied to the Fountas and Pinnell. And I would reject that as a part of the IEP. What we really want is something under what grade level are they at? Where are they reading? You want to know that, not in relation to any program that they're using in school, but in relation to their peers in more of a standardized way. I'm gonna go back to this page. Your goal, what challenging yet attainable goal can we expect the student to meet by the end of this IEP period? How will we know that student has reached this goal? Goals should be SMART, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and relevant and timely. Underneath your goal are your benchmarks. What will the student need to do to complete this goal? It'll always also have criteria for knowing that they've met that goal or that benchmark. If you don't understand what they're saying, say that. If they say 3 out of 5 times, say, what does that mean? 80% of the time, what does that mean? Make sure that it's written in a way that you know when they're collecting data and when they're going to be doing progress reports, you know what to be looking at. Service delivery grid. Why do I keep opening that? Part A of the service delivery grid, again, make sure the dates are all in check, is that consultation, indirect services to school personnel and parents. So this is where you want the goals written, what type of service, who, and when, and then these are our start and end dates. You can be written into this as parent or as, if it's a behavior, if it's autism, if there's an autism specialist and they meet with the school every week or every other week for 30 minutes, put yourself in here. It should be, because it says and parents, but you want to make sure that your name is in here. These documents should be written as specific as they can be, so that if you were to move, this document goes with you and the next school will know what that means. Best practice is great. And when I say to schools that say, oh, we already do that here, and I say, that is fabulous. What if I go to a school that doesn't already do that there? We are acknowledging that my student needs this. I would like it in the IEP. Even though your district is fabulous and you already provide that, the next district might not be as fabulous. So in our grid, A is not student. So this is adults in the life of a student. B is what's happening in the classroom, so that's sort of the inclusion component. And C is pull out in other settings. Any questions on the grid or any of that? Oh.
Quick question, Bridget.
Yep.
Just a question. And placed out of district with the current situation, could you opt as a parent to add transportation to this section? Say, for instance, you want to drive your child to and from school. That need to be on the IEP, or is that something separate?
Let me see. You're kind of cutting out. I'm going to click onto the chat and read that. Child's placed out of district with the current pandemic situation. Could you opt as a parent to add transportation to this section? So are you wanting, if it's on the IEP for transportation, there's a transportation component to the IEP that we'll get to. and I think it's
Mhm.
the next page. You can always be the one that drives your child to school, but you can request reimbursement for your mileage if you're the one that's driving your child to school. Does that address
Okay.
that question? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I just
Child is-
wanted to know if you like put it in writing.
If you're the one that is providing the transportation and it's changed from the school providing a van or a bus,
Yes.
yes, because you can ask for reimbursement.
Oh,
And so that's sort of where you can
okay.
get that.
Got
So
you.
the school would pay you and reimburse you to provide
Oh, okay.
transportation, which is a common thing because some parents aren't wanting their students on buses. Because that's 6 feet apart, I'm not sure how that is going with van pools or the 3 feet, you know. So
Yeah.
I would agree with that. But I always would pose it in a question in an email to your team leader or the special ed director and say, you know, currently I'm providing transportation. And you can have that noted on the IEP. Does that help?
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay. Page 6. Again, why am I clicking on that? So crazy. So this is where they'll say, is a student removed from the general ed classroom at any time? And if yes, it may be students' disability is such that whole group instruction impacts progress. Students, that's usually the one that, or curriculum is not addressed in the general ed. And so that's where that non-participation comes in. Removal with the disability for the regular environment occurs only when the nature or severity of the disability of a child is such that education in regular classes with the use of supplementary aids and services cannot be achieved satisfactorily. Schedule modification, this is that extended school year piece, or shorter day or shorter year, or longer day or longer year. How will the student schedule be modified? Why is the schedule modification being recommended? How will services be coordinated? When this section is filled out, I suggest that it get added into this section, even with the dates. You know, it could be June 8th to August 5th, so that that extended school year gets put in the grid, just so it is not missed. Here's our transportation piece. So does the student require transportation as a result of the disability? So I'm going to go back to this form. So regular transportation is the typical way students get to school. So if in your area students walk to school, but your student is not capable of that and it's a safety reason or a physical reason, then they would require specialized special transportation. If everyone takes the bus and your student can take the bus, then they take the bus. If there are special requirements though, that's where it gets. So regular transportation will be provided in the same manner as it would be provided for students without disabilities. If the child is placed away from the local school, transportation will always be provided. This can come into play if you have a preschooler who they're required to attend school, but the school does not provide transportation. This piece, because it would impact FAPE in their access, transportation could be provided for your preschool students. It also, for summer school, I've had many students who have had transportation to summer school because it is a part of their IEP. Special transportation will be provided in the following manner: on a regular transportation vehicle with following modifications, specialized equipment and precautions. So maybe a bus monitor needs to be there, or on a special transportation vehicle, again, with a booster seat. You know, you want to make sure that it has those pieces in it, depending on the size of your child and the requirements. This is, I think, Pauline, the part you were speaking of. After the team makes a transportation decision and after a placement decision has been made, a parent may choose to provide transportation and may be eligible for reimbursement under certain circumstances. Any parent who plans to transport their child to school should notify the school district contact person. So there it is, right there in writing for you, Pauline.
Got it.
All right. IEP 7, state and district-wide assessments. The big piece of this is any accommodations used for assessment purposes should be closely modeled on the accommodations that are provided to the student as part of his or her instructional program. So if, oh, I keep doing this, man, I have 1,000 windows open. All right, so column 1 is they're going to take the test on demand under routine conditions. Up here, you would say MCAS, or if you have district-wide other assessments that happen, STAR testing and things. So this is on demand, no accommodations needed. This is on-demand testing with accommodations in that content area. Because this is a 1-year IEP, if next year they have the history test, but this year they don't, but it's during the life of this IEP, then that is checked. Column 3 is alternate assessments. The state already has alternate assessments, so those need to be checked, and you'll have a standard way of doing an alternate assessment. This part right here, this column B, if your student on the MCAS needs to take the test one-on-one, so that there's someone there to scribe, then in their science class, they need to take the test one-on-one with someone to scribe. So making sure that whatever is used here is applicable for their curriculum when it is not MCAS. If this is how we assess someone, if the best way to get information and what your child knows is with these accommodations, then the best way to get information on what your child knows is with these accommodations across the board. IEP 8. Oh, I did it again. Additional information can be very useful. It can describe specific things. Include the following transition information: the anticipated graduation date, the state of interagency responsibilities, or needed linkages, and discussion of transfers rights at least 1 year before the age of majority, and a recommendation of Chapter 688 referral. This section document efforts to obtain participation if a parent and if student did not attend the meeting or provide input. I believe that the state allows 3 attempts to get the parents to meet, and after that, the meeting takes place, and the school needs to document how many times they've addressed that. Personally, I think a silver lining from COVID is we have these Zoom meetings, and it's easier for parents to participate in the process if they don't have to take time off of work, transportation time to get to the school, to get back. It makes these meetings more accessible. And record other relevant IEP information not previously stated. Whenever I have something that has come up in parent concerns, I always ask for it to be added, if it's appropriate, in additional information. Let's see. Oh, this is a good one. The person who signs this. Oh, sorry about this. So the bullying statement also would go in additional information. Is student at risk of being the target of bullying or perceived as bullying due to disability? IEP 8. School districts must be aware that if an individual is serving in this capacity as the LEA, that individual must be authorized to contractually commit resources as the IEP serves as a contractual agreement. So let me go back right here. So you want your special ed director, or if the team leader signs this, you want to make sure they're someone who has the permission to allocate district resources. And then the date. Here is your section. You can accept an IEP, you can reject the full IEP, you can partially reject an IEP. I always say that, we're trying to get to a yes on an IEP. That doesn't always happen. There's usually something in an IEP that you can accept. And accepting something in the IEP allows it to continue moving forward. But if there are pieces that you are rejecting, this is where you would write them. Prior to doing this step though, I always reach out to the LEA and say, you know what, I noticed that we requested, or it was stated 3 times 30 for speech. I'm seeing only 2 times 30 for speech. Is this a typo, or did I misunderstand the meeting? And they'll say, oh, that was a typo. You know, we'll put it in right now. So try to get to that understanding even before you do this response, I think can be helpful. And then you can request a meeting to discuss the rejected IEP or the rejected portions. Again, we'll go through these at later webinars. So special populations. Get on this one. So there are certain aspects for children ages 3 to 5. The IEP is an IF. I can't think of what it is. I apologize. There's certain things you need to discuss when talking about transition aged youth, eligible students with behavior problems, and students with significant disabilities. And in this document on pages 7 and 8, if I can get to them, which I can't, you'll have the answer to that. Oh, do I see movement?
Hey, Bridget.
Hi.
Yeah.
Do we have a question?
Yeah, can you hear me? Okay. I just wanted, before you moved on, a question about bullying. Just wanted to ask.
Okay.
Okay, so can bullying not about disability, but other categories be included in an IEP? No. Could it be included if the bullying is exacerbated, the student's disability and ability to access education? Can you talk more about what the bullying section can include?
So it would include that, would your student be a target of a bully, or would your student be perceived as the bully due to their disability? So let me read the question again. Can bullying, not about disability, but other categories, be included in IEP? I guess I'm not understanding that part. If no, could it be included if the bullying is exacerbating the student's disability and ability to access education? So yes, so this would be, in this area, your student would need goals around what skills are they missing to help them access the social part of the school. Can you talk more about what the bullying section can include? I mean, I think at times it can include the monitoring of the student depending on the age and the disability, if there needs to be adult monitors, you know, during those social situations or during transition times in the hallways, which is a lot of times where we see those during recess time. If there are skills that need to be generalized by the student, then I think that can be written in here. But again, it would be part of the grid, because if monitoring during recess due to bullying being the target of a bully, that could go on the grid page. But if it's on the grid page, then it's a goal. And so then there's a goal for behaviors, because we want to provide kids with the most independence that we can, and just providing them a protective layer of adults does not give them independence. So making sure whatever is the reason behind this, that we're giving them access to that. I hope that answers your question, Rowan. Okay. What do you think, Pauline? Can I move on? Oh, there's a chat. Okay, so when the student is the victim of bullying, again, that's part of that. There's a skill or that it needs to be addressed, and this is the area, the first area other than behavior. And when you mention, I would mention that in your parent concerns. And then that will guide sort of the conversation throughout, because the parent concern is what you talk about first. And then that guides, you know, what the school has to offer. And I would just make sure there's some sort of goal related to it. Okay, progress reports. So the progress report is designed to report the progress of each goal individually. It will come home with report cards or whenever other reports are required at your school district. It'll repeat information from the goal. So this is the progress report, which is the goal page. It has all of your goal information up here. Down here, progress report date and which number it is within the sort of season of your IEP. They're required to be sent to parents at least as often as parents are informed of their non-disabled child's progress. Each progress report must describe the student's progress toward meeting each annual goal. So what it normally will do, but sometimes it's just anecdotal. Sometimes they'll write, you know, he's working on this, he's getting better, end of story. And that's no longer allowed, the sort of the anecdotal information. You want data. All of this is data driven. So if it says 3 out of 5 times, we'll make less than 5 errors in a written sample. You want them to state how many errors are they currently doing and are they going to be able to progress through that goal to achieve it within the annual time frame. Making sure we have these is really important, and making sure that if you see this information and you're in disagreement with it, particularly now that if your student is remote learning, you're able to see what they know and what they don't know. It's always good to contact them and say, I know you wrote this on the progress report, however, I'm in disagreement. I'm not seeing that here at home, you know, and have that conversation with them. When the progress reports are sent, read them. Again, a lot of times we forget to do that and we think, oh, okay. But this is that data collection. If, you know, down the line you say, you know, I don't think the school is providing my child with what they need. This is where you have the data to say, has not met the goal, or the goal has remained the same for over, you know, 1 year. They're having the same goal every year and they're not meeting it. Something is, you know, the needs are not being met somewhere. IEP amendments. What changes will be made to the existing IEP? This form should be used for minor IEP adjustments only and should not be used if the IEP service changes. Will also require a change in educational placement. So this would be what changes will be made to the existing IEP. So it could be, will now include social skills group Y, and it could be, has changed from elementary curriculum, you know, to the middle school. And so with that change, you may need a different service provision. And any questions on IEP development?
We have one.
Okay.
So this is the question. Can you describe what significant disabilities entails?
So that I think is referring to special populations, significant disabilities. Now I thought I had the correct thing on this, but I don't. So it's not directions for the IEP forms. All right, I'm going to find the correct, and I don't want to misrepresent anything. So I am going to go right up to the first slide. My fast fingers. IEP forms. And it's not here. Sorry. So I do not have, let me see, that information at my fingertips right now, and I apologize for that. And again, I don't want to misrepresent DESE has to say about it. So I don't have the answer to that, but I do have your name, and I will email you that information, and I will post it on Attendify. How does that sound, Pauline?
Yep.
Okay.
One more.
Our school's mandated to give a summary form to parents at the conclusion of the IEP meeting. So what they are required to do is provide you with, if there's a change in goals are created, they have to provide you with the grid page that says that information on it. I always ask for meeting notes at the start of all of my meetings that I'm an advocate at. And sometimes schools have that process and there's meeting notes, but sometimes they only will say, we'll provide you with the grid because that is regulation. So it is district to district. But if they're making amendments or if they're making adjustments to the grid, if it's an annual and you're getting a new IEP out of it, it's that grid page that you need to have a copy of. Okay.
Hi, Bridget. One question in the chat. You want to read it?
Sure.
This is the presentation interactive as being shown by the presenter? In other words, once I download this presentation, will I be able to click on each of the links to go to the specific form?
You absolutely will. And if for some reason it doesn't, then email me. But yes, this is an interactive. I'm going to fix, and it's through Google Slides, so that when I say I will fix some of my slides don't have the correct link on, they'll be fixed. Because I just wrote myself a note. All right,
Perfect.
Are we good to move?
Good to move on, yep.
Okay. So this next one is placement. And again, I'm going to just go over the forms and we'll have a more in-depth webinars on this. So I want to caution us for getting too deep into the weeds on this one. So making a placement decision is the third step in the process. The team decides on the placement after the IEP is written. So you create the IEP and as you say, as you're creating the IEP, if what sometimes happens is districts will say, well, we don't do that here. And what I say to them is, this is an IEP written for this child, not for this school. So whatever the child needs, we're making sure it gets put on that IEP. The school district must work cooperatively with the team to implement the placement determination and must ensure that final placement is made consistent with the IEP, least restrictive environment requirements, and requirements related to giving preference to approved programs and programs in Massachusetts. Also, there's that 1 hour of travel time. That it's not a hard and fast regulation, but there is that piece. If your school, if you live in Gardner, in May School in Springfield, that would be over the 1 hour. So you can, I think, negotiate for that time difference over an hour if you can justify that that is the only placement that would meet your students' needs. But they do, want something close within the proximity of the family. So, team determination of type of placement. There are two forms. There's for the 3 to 5-year-olds and the 6 to 21-year-olds. Team recommended educational placements. So this is sort of different, and I was just speaking about out-of-district placements. But here you take for the 3 to 5-year-olds, the majority of time, team recommended special education placements. Placement consent. The one that we'll, as SESP, see is this one. And it talks about percentage of time outside of the general ed classroom. So services are provided outside the general ed classroom, less than 21%, because the assumption is you're in the general ed classroom. Now, these services are what's sort of taking you out of that. Full inclusion, partial inclusion. This is if a student in state custody or hospitalized, placement has been made by a state agency to an institutionalized setting for non-educational reasons. These components come into play. And then your consent form. I consent, I refuse, I request a meeting to discuss. I have some more notes on here. A delay in determination of the placement or the specific program location should not delay the issuance of the IEP to the parents. So even while you're still discussing placement, that IEP needs to be sent to you. You need to approve, reject, partial reject, full reject, and that IEP services need to begin, even while placement conversation is continuing. The administrative placement information form is for school district record keeping only. The requested information is self-explanatory or can be answered by reading the directions included in the form itself. Let's take a look. So again, you would not receive this at home, but it's good to know what exists out there. The PL3 has become important. Requesting this document is very important right now due to school closures and remote learning plans. This states level of need. When they say high need students, this is sort of the form that they are referring to. Their level of need, low, low, moderate, high. So depending on nature of disability, the level of needs. I think by now everyone knows, and for SESPs, a student in congregate care is a high need student. So they would be provided with instruction in school, sort of in that when physically possible, when the Board of Health has not come in and closed the school. So again, PL3 is not something that you get, but if you hear them say, well, your student's not high need, ask for this form just to make sure and to see what they're considering high need. Placement questions.
Here we go.
I know placement's such a warm move.
So when requesting for initial testing, you know which testing should be done. All suspected areas could be interpreted differently. I know educational assessment is good for any academic juggling, but how do you justify a psych eval also? And should you always request that if the school only wants to do the eval? Thank you.
So what I would say to this is when it's an initial eval and you're saying that you have an area that you're concerned about, it can sometimes the age of your student, if it's an initial eval and they're very young, sometimes asking for those, the cognitive tests aren't going to give you a super accurate reading. Sometimes the speech and language, usually speech and language and OT for initial eval for the young students is enough to get information and to go off of. If the school is rejecting your request for a psych eval or a psychoeducational evaluation, but is going to do other pieces of it, to get the time clock, the time moving, sort of the timeline started, I would accept the assessments that they're offering or that they're recommending. Have those assessments completed, and at the meeting, if you don't have enough information where it says on that flow chart, are you satisfied with the findings or with the evaluation, you can say, I don't know why my student is having a hard time in reading. I get that the reading scores are low, but the cognitive in comparison to the educational will tell me why and what areas, will give me more information than what just this reading test will give me. So that's why I always go back to that psychoed and say, but this is going to help me with the why part of it. Is it short-term memory is getting in the way? Is it visual spatial is getting in the way? And I had a math concern. It's not always just about the content, the math, the reading, and the written language. It can be about processing speed. You know, there are all sorts of components. So it's important when you make that initial evaluation, that initial request, that you state the areas that you're concerned in. My student's memory is just, you know, I'm concerned about their memory. I'm concerned about their processing speed. I ask them a question and it takes them a long time, or they, you know, they sort of use those, give me a minute, give me a minute, give me a minute, kind of pause strategies. So when you're making that initial request, stating all of that, if the school comes back and says we're only going to do a reading assessment, then you can, and they'll have to state that in the N1, we're doing, you know, we'll do the reading assessment and give you the form. You can reply back with, my concerns are, as stated in my initial, could you please explain why those pieces are not being, and more times than not, they'll say, okay, we'll do that. But just the initial eval is tough if you're not sure, and just saying something's up and I need testing is not, you have to really be specific so that they're targeting those areas in those assessments that will be needed. Did that answer those?
I think so.
All right, let me see. I don't think. Here are the documents that will hopefully help everyone. The resources. Parents' notice of procedural safeguards. And this is that one where sometimes it's green or pink in your school district and they say, do you want another copy of that thing? Say yes and read it. This gives you all the information. It really is a powerful document that sometimes, I think when schools offer, they sort of roll their eyes. Do you really want this? Because they have to say it so many times. I would say, yes, I do. It was updated in November of 2019. So if you haven't seen it, with this update, you're going to want to. It also provides these links, just like my presentation does. The annotated IEP, Federation and DESE partnered to create this. This gray area gives you sort of the cheat sheet into what should be included in this section. And it better prepares you for the IEP meetings so that, you know, I think even as a seasoned special ed teacher, some of this I became lax in because I became part of just the school system I was in, and this is how we did it, and this is how we did it. This, keeping your eye on this document will be helpful. So I've included that. And thank you very much. And let's see if we have any other questions. Look at that, 137.
I know. Oh, way to go. That's a grade. Total grade. Thanks so much, Bridget.
You're very welcome.
We have no more questions.
I think there's a couple of chats.
There's some. I asked, I don't think there's anything extra. I think I asked.
Oh, you put the evaluation? Yay, Beth put the evaluation in.
Oh,
please evaluate me.
Yes.
For the good or the bad. Hey, data's data. And that's what I say about the kids. Data's data. If I can do something differently, clearly have links that are appropriate and that have go to the document that I want, I'll be fixing that. But yeah, you know, the more information we have.
Need credits. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and if you need credits.
Please. Yep.
Yeah. Not just about me.
You gotta fill that. So good.
So, thank you all very much. I hope you know, you'll be able to take something away from this and apply it to your everyday. All right. Is that it, Pauline?
I think that's it on that note.
All right.
Unless anyone has anything else.